So, as I told you, prepare for the street chaos. They're telling us what they're going to do. Yesterday's show went bonkers about the coming coup because I'm just using the Democrats' own words. You know, I debate Chris Hahn a lot on Fox. I haven't done much lately. But Chris went after me on Twitter yesterday saying, oh my gosh, this coming coup is loser talk. Okay, it's the Democrats' talk. You're the losers. It's their talk. We used their own footage during yesterday's show. That December 6th to December 14th, 8-day window where the states are told by statutory U.S. law in a presidential election, you damn well better figure out who won this election. Your state legislators got it now. You have 6 days to figure this out. You can expect unprecedented chaos during that time frame. Mark it. Now, even the media is starting to figure out, Joe, the media is starting to figure out that if they continue to downplay the problems with mail-in ballots, because, you know, why would they do that? Come on, you all know the answer to this. It's not a quiz show. Today I'm asking a lot of questions, but sometimes you can avoid an assertion. You can never, ever avoid a question. A brilliant political mind once told me that. The brain is wired to automatically respond to a question. They can ignore an assertion. Why? Why would the media all of a sudden, as I'm going to show you in a second with this Associated Press story, the AP, why are they now starting to acknowledge that mail-in voting could create a big problem? Because, ladies and gentlemen, you can't say mail-in voting is not a problem at all because Trump said it's going to be a problem. And then when mail-in voting becomes a problem, you need to take to the courts to win the election. You can't then say, you guys just said it wasn't a problem. Matter of fact, we have your headlines right here. I just saw it. Mm-hmm. You all said, no, Trump is lying. So follow the media logic here. The media are full-time liberal activists. We all get that, right? Mm-hmm. Paula, you get that? Paula shaking Joe, everybody understands that. Nobody actually takes the media seriously, right? So they're full-time liberal activists. They're not telling you the story. They're telling you a story. And a story, a narrative they want to tell you is whatever Trump says, the opposite is true because we hate Trump. It's no more complicated than that. So President Trump has already highlighted the massive problems with mail-in voting repeatedly, as you know. So, of course, the media hates Trump, has to prove him wrong at every turn because they're liberal activists. They're not serious people. So what did they say? They've been saying, Trump's crazy. Fact check. Mail-in voting is A-OK. But now they're realizing they've got a problem, Houston. The problem is this. When they have to sue in the courts to throw out election deadlines because of the problems with mail-in voting, what they don't want is people going back and pulling their articles going, wait, here it is on my phone right here. You just said a few weeks ago it wasn't a problem. So now all of a sudden you're seeing AP articles like this one where they're starting to leak out that there may be an issue with mail-in voting. What Trump said, even though we hate him, we may need this later. So AP headline, in battlegrounds, absentee ballot rejections could triple. Wow. I thought Trump was crazy bringing attention to votes in the mail that are rejected typically at a higher rate than in-person voting, as the New York Times' Adam Liptak reported back in 2012. So you're telling me Trump's not wrong. Folks, please don't attribute any of this to media integrity by the AP. Because I know some of you who are liberals or watchers go, Dan, the media is finally standing up for journalistic standards and acknowledging what they've already acknowledged through the years, that there's a significant problem with fraud and disregarded ballots and mail-in voting at a higher rate than in-person voting. That's not why they're doing this. They're not acknowledging Trump is right. They're doing this because they're liberal activists and they need a tool to go to court and fight legal battles. They're activists. They're not media people to keep the election going on past the deadlines I just told you about. That's it. Period. Proverbial full stop. From the AP piece. Read it. You'll see. This is the opening. Every presidential election. Yeah, no kidding. We knew this all along. This year, that problem could be much worse and potentially pivotal in hotly contested battleground states. Gee, you think, fellas? With the coronavirus creating a surge in mail-in balloting and postal delays across the country, the number of rejected ballots in November is projected to be significantly higher than previous elections. Again, folks, if you've been watching this show for the past few weeks, we have only discussed this and the problems with mail-in voting repeatedly. Repeatedly. There are fewer problems with absentee ballot voting because you have to go and request a ballot, and there are certain security measures. Mail-in voting, where you are sent a ballot, whether you asked for one or not, is open season, ladies and gentlemen. It is going to be the Wild West. And the AP's figuring out right now that they're going to need to say there's a problem with mail-in voting. God forbid Trump wants. Did you notice, by the way, Joe, just a coincidence, don't worry, that as the polls are starting to shift now in swing states in Donald Trump's favor, all of a sudden the press, shocker, Joe, this is crazy. All of a sudden the press is starting to say, hey, all of a sudden that mail-in voting may not be such a good idea. Why? Why? Because they thought Joe Biden, right? This is hilarious. They thought Joe Biden was going to win in an epic landslide. So they said that just ignore Trump's problems with the election's going to have problems, whatever. We don't want any issues. Now, all of a sudden they're figuring out they could lose. And now they're telegraphing to the whole planet and the globe, hey, there could be a problem with this election. This is so transparently obvious. Now, you never want to leave the buffoons at Facebook out of it. So Facebook, you know, Zuckererg and that crew, of course they got to get involved in this too. Folks, these people all read from the same activist playbook. It's pathetic. This is a bit of a longer cut, a little over a minute 30, but it's worth your time. This is Facebook CEO Mark Zuckererg. This is him interviewing with Axios, where he's basically laying out, you'd say the Facebook game plan post-election? No, come on, Facebook doesn't have a game plan. It's the Democrat game, and the Democrats hand it to them. Game plan, Facebook. As if they're not the same thing with the Democrats. Give me a break. Here's Zuckererg laying out and preparing, as I've been warning you again for 2 weeks now, given the body blows to soften up the body of the American body politic, that no matter what happens after the election, if it's not a Biden victory on election night, it doesn't matter what happens. We're going to keep this going as long as we want, and we're not even going to let you talk about the election. Here's Zuckererg right out of the Democrat playbook. Check this out.
One of the things that I think we and other media need to start doing is preparing the American people that there's nothing illegitimate about this election taking additional days or even weeks to make sure that all of the votes are counted. In fact, that might be important to make sure that this is a legitimate and fair election. So we're going to do a bunch of different messaging around that just to make sure that people know that that's normal. So if one of the candidates in any of the races claims victory before there's a consensus result, then we're going to add some informational context to that post directly, saying that there's no consensus result yet. I think that this is important because there is, unfortunately, I think, a heightened risk of civil unrest in the period, between voting and a result being called or after that. And I just think that we need to be doing everything that we can to reduce the chances of violence or civil unrest in the wake of this election.
If that were to happen, would Facebook be blamed in part?
Well, I can't speak to what other people would do, but I think we're trying to make sure that we do our part to make sure that that none of this is organized on Facebook. We want to make sure that none of that stuff is happening on our services. But the country is very charged right now. So I think regardless of what we do, there's some chance that this happens across the country. I just want to make sure that we do our part to not contribute to.
This is incredible. Notice how the Democrats and Zuckererg, because they're all liberals over there. We get it, right? There's a couple of token Republicans or whatever who work on Facebook, but roughly it's mostly liberals. It is the Democrats and their Democrat-oriented groups like the Transition Integrity Project with Soros's person running it. It is only them calling for a, quote, street fight. Their words, not mine. I have never said to my conservative listeners, you go get in a street fight ever. We have never said, that's the Democrats. And yet look at Zuckererg's excuse for we're not going to allow election misinformation afterwards. what he's basically saying, let me translate. If Donald Trump wins, we're not going to let Donald Trump say he won. There you go. That's the translation. And his excuse is this, because we don't want to be the cause of violence. No one's calling for violence but the Democrats. That is this is like the dipsy-do flipperooski. The flipperooski dipsy-dooski. This is a total 180. It is the Democrats calling for a, quote, street fight. And in case you think they're talking about, no, we just mean it for a legal one. No, they specifically say, we're not going to use the courts. We want a street fight. That's their thing, their group. And Zuckererg, he's talking about Trump. He's not going to let Trump declare victory if Trump wins. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a dystopian universe right now. I mean, it is up to you to be prepared for this. Are you reaching out to your local Republican clubs? Are you ready to get out there and peacefully protest afterwards, unlike this violent street fight Democrats? I hope so, because your country's at stake. You have between November 3rd and December 14th to figure this out. Election Day and December 14th, where the presidential electors are chosen. And in that 6-day window between December 8th and December 14th, you can expect unprecedented chaos if there's a conflict in your state about who won. Are you ready? I hope so. I am. Folks, the people we're dealing